Welcome everybody to Tech Breakfast. We'll get going in a minute. I'm waiting on Nate from Cali Audio, and he'll be showing Cali Audio's studio. They have an office in Burbank, right there near Warner Bros. And really close to me. And they have an ATMOS room with all Cali speakers, and look at people are piling in. So that'll be interesting. And then after that, we'll have Alan Hyatt from talking about Trident products. And my review of just so you know, he's going to be talking about the dual channel Trident A range, which I'd reviewed for Mix, and it just came out today. They're showing the Mix online. So I just saw that just now. So it's really a nice piece of gear. Wow. I'd love to own that. I had to send it back, however. It looks like this. I'll kind of upstage him a little bit. Here you go.
Peter Barker. Oh, what'd you do? Oh.
So that's what it looks like, if you don't know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And you can see if you've ever used a Trident console, it's just the input, two of the input strips in horizontal. And there's 6 transformers, 2 line in, 2 mic in, and 2 line out, Souters. So anyway, here you go. Pretty cool.
Barry, you may need to unmute everybody.
Well, something happens where it keeps muting. I don't do anything here. It's just doing that. I'm sorry. Oh, there is.
You can unmute. Everybody can unmute themselves.
Good morning, all from Ohio.
There you go. Kate? Nate, are you with us?
I'm here.
Okay, well, if you are ready, I'll just let you screen share and go. We'll get going. Nate, I assume you're on some kind of iPhone or a portable camera. Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I'm on my iPhone.
Yeah, so Nate is Cali Audio, and he's going to show their room, their ATMOS room. It's all Cali speakers. So I thought it would be pretty interesting, everyone. And we still got people coming on here. I got 15. All right. Well, everybody that's here is here. So go for it, Nate.
Great. So the purpose of this room, and all
share
around here.
Share screenage. Do I need to do something here?
No, I got it.
Okay.
So yeah, the purpose of this room is for us to be able to give demos of our speakers in an ATMOS environment. Particularly these speakers that you see here, these are the IN series. So we have IN 8s as well as IN 5s. These are coaxial speaker. So it's got a woofer, and then this is a mid-range around a tweeter. And that 3-way coaxial architecture allows us to get the benefits of a coaxial speaker where you get that really nice imaging without the typical drawback where the woofer moving around the smaller drivers introduces intermodulation distortion at higher SPLs. So we get the benefits of a 3-way where you have the dedicated mid-range driver for super clear mid-range response. And then you also have the benefits of a coaxial speaker with that imaging. And that works particularly well for object-based audio because the stereo image is so strong. You have a stereo image now between each speaker in the setup. And so as you're placing objects in the space, you can really hear exactly where everything is placed and how that's working together. So you can see, I'll try to get towards the back of this room as much as I can to show you the scope of it. It's a fairly small room. It's about 10 feet wide by about 16 feet deep. We've got the 3 IN 8s in the front. We've got Ion 8s on the sides and in the back, and then up top we have the Ion 5s, and those are mounted using Triad Orbit's mounting hardware. So the challenge in this room, there's a couple challenges that we had. Obviously, working in a small rectangular room, you're going to be dealing with a lot of room modes, especially when we're talking about Atmos, when we're talking about doing demos. A lot of people like to turn it up, which exacerbates the problem of room modes. So we have a couple things going on. We've got treatment behind each of the speakers to absorb the rear reflection from the speaker. And then we have skyline QRDs at the first reflections from the left and the right. And then we've also got a QRD panel in the rear to help disperse some things, as well as a custom cloud that we built that is above the listener and between the 4 overhead speakers. The other big thing that we have is these 2 subs.
Excuse me, Nate. Steve, you want to mute your mic, please? You keep triggering you. So we see you for some reason are overriding Nate's presentation. Okay, back to it, Nate.
Great. So what we did as sort of the major way to mitigate the room modes is we have 2 subwoofers which are in opposite corners of the room and in the quarter points of the wall that they're in. So that subwoofer is a quarter of the way into the rear wall. That subwoofer in the front is a quarter away into the front wall. And so those are canceling out the room modes right at the mix position, which is kind of where I'm standing now, which gives us really accurate bass response. And when we're speccing out customer systems, we typically recommend at least 2 subwoofers so that we can achieve this. We recently had Mix Magazine, as well as Warren Hewart, covered the system that we put in Studio F at the Village, which is a small room. It's smaller than this, and is using 3 subwoofers. And a lot of people said, why do you need 3 subwoofers in a room that small? That's got to be overwhelming. It's not to get more bass into the room. It's so that we can use those 3 subwoofers and some creative placement between the 3 so that at the mix position, you have even bass response. So it's using the room in conjunction with the subs to cancel out those modes so that you have a neutral reference. It's not just to overwhelm the room with bass. So then the other problem in this room, or opportunity for improvement in this room, obviously it's not totally symmetrical. When you've got 11 speakers in 11 different spots, you're going to have different interactions with the room. So we're using an MTRX and DADMAN to correct for frequency response in the room. We are unsuccessfully running that right now through an HD native that has decided to die. And we are also using, so for reference playback, we have both some Atmos files that we've come across, as well as an Apple TV that we are running through a Yamaha receiver and then up into the MTRX. Recently, we've been reading some articles that have been in Production Expert, as well as some other things. And it looks like we're going to be able to skip the Apple TV and the Yamaha receiver going forward and play Atmos content directly from Apple Music. And it looks like some of the video streaming services like Netflix are also going to allow that directly off of the Mac Mini that we're using as sort of the heart of this system. That's kind of cool from a demo standpoint for us, for a speaker manufacturer. But what I think is exciting about that is, as of about 3 months ago, if you wanted demo content, if you wanted reference mixes basically in Atmos through your system, that was another $5,000 when you figured in the receiver to handle balanced outputs and all that sort of stuff. As of right now, that $5,000 cost looks like it's going away. And so that brings the cost for a reference system down substantially, which I just think is going to mean we're going to get better mixes coming out. People aren't referencing on headphones and then trying to do a mix in speakers and trying to match it up that way. They have a direct one-to-one reference that I think is going to be super advantageous. And I'll just point out, not to get too salesy, all of the speakers in this room, the total value is, I think, $6,800. And then adding in the MTRX and the HD native and the Mac, I think brings that up to about 12 grand. And that cost is getting lower in terms of outboard equipment. So we are getting to the point where you can build a fully fledged Atmos system for just under 10 grand, which I think is really neat.
Great. Hey, Nate, talk about the subwoofers negating the mode. Are there adjustments, phase adjustments or polarity adjustments on the back of those subwoofers? Are you just move them around the room? Is that what you do?
In this case, we've just moved them around the room. The subwoofers do have a 0 to 180 switch. So there's nothing in between. It's just positive or negative phase. You can do some clever things in terms of time delay as well, in order to bring that to where it needs to be. In this case, because it's a small room, because the modes are very predictable, these two subwoofers are both playing positive phase. They're getting the exact same signal, and they're really canceling out right kind of where I'm standing.
And where are they? How far apart are they approximately? I'm just trying to envision this. Did you show? Did you show?
Yeah, I
them?
want to say 16 feet.
Oh, they're one in the back and one in the front, huh?
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
I came in late. I don't know if you said this already, but what are the dimensions of the room?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Roughly 16 by 12 by 13 up to the actual ceiling of the room, and by 9 up to our cloud.
Just out of curiosity, if you can't share, what was the crossover point for your subwoofer?
So we are crossing over at 120, which is the LFE crossover. We are not base managing this system. So given the size of the room, given the low frequency response of these speakers, we don't really need to base manage in here.
I'm going to share a screen here with this is, you should be seeing the IN5 maybe, if I did that right. Hang on. Let's see here. I have them all on my desktop and of course can't do diddly with them. There you go. Let's try this one. It's kind of small. So he was talking about, I have a pair of these. This is the tweeter right here, and in the mid range, and then the 5-inch woofer. And they also make an IN8, which is, as you would expect, more bottom end, more bass. So go ahead.
And the bigger difference between the IN5 and the IN8, we don't subscribe to the notion of the bigger speaker ought to have a lot more low end or play a lot louder. So we're using the larger radiator surface to achieve lower distortion. So an IN5 plays down to 39 at -10, and IN8 plays down to 37. They're about 2 dB apart in terms of max SPL, but the IN8 has half the distortion of the IN5. And that's really the biggest difference that you're going to see. The IN5 is really designed for spaces where you need the system, but it needs to be smaller. So overhead hanging is an obvious use case. It's specifically designed actually for customers in Europe and much of Asia, where people are mixing in very small rooms and they physically don't have the space to set up IN8s.
Somebody in the chat has asked, what's feeding the speakers?
That's a great question. Turn my camera around, if I can.
You should be good. I stopped. Yeah, there you go. Okay, there you go. There's John. You got to mute your mic. John Hart, please mute your mic. What happens is when your mic gets audio, it goes to your camera. That's the way Zoom works. For some reason, you're stuck.
So we're feeding the system. Sorry for the mess. We're feeding the system with the MTRX. So coming out of the Mac, it's going into an HD native and into the MTRX. And then coming out of the Apple TV, it's going into a Yamaha receiver and up via DB25 into the MTRX.
Got it.
We are probably going to keep the MTRX in line, at least for the foreseeable future. We will probably get rid of the HD native and replace that with something that can handle Dante, because using the Dante virtual sound card and using Dante back and forth to just use the MTRX for DSP rather than also using it for control and configuration seems to work really well. We used a Focusrite Redline 16 at a demo event recently.
Can you show those on your, all I'm getting is Zoom user, some kind of default, maybe.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Maybe your camera. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Okay, great. So yeah, this is the MTRX right here. This is the HD native that we're currently using to feed it. The HD native comes out Thunderbolt from the Mac and goes in on a proprietary signal called Digilink into the MTRX. And like I said, we used this with a Focusrite Redline 16 recently. So we were coming out Thunderbolt from the Mac into the Focusrite. The Focusrite was sending Dante to the Matrix for processing, and then Dante back from the Matrix into the Focusrite out to the speakers. The Matrix really excels at the processing part of it. The configuration, the control, at least for music setup, where you've got maybe one or two sources and one speaker configuration, the Focusrite is a lot easier to use, and it looks nicer as well, which, day-to-day use, I would rather be looking at something that looks like it was designed in this decade. But the MTRX really does have fantastic DSP.
Designed in this decade. Yeah, good feature. Well, for new stuff anyway, good feature. Further questions, anybody? Feel free.
What about the one from the Galaxy 32, Galaxy 64? That also has onboard DSP for the speaker management. We've been using that for Atmos installations as well, and
Yeah,
as well as the MTRX.
I haven't messed around with that yet. I'm excited about it. The one thing that I would point out, and this is from, obviously I'm a manufacturer, but I'm not making IO devices. The cost is still a little high to my mind. Both the MTRX and the Galaxy. I think you're looking at about $5,000. I've heard great things about the Galaxy. I'm excited to get my hands on one and use one. I think overall, this is just my opinion. I'm not trying to throw shade on any of the manufacturers out there. I think one of the issues with the Atmos processors that are currently on the market is that you're paying both for the processing and the output and the input, where most people who are setting up Atmos already have the recording side of their workflow sorted. They don't need to pay several $1,000s for an input section. They already have it. What they need is the processing and the routing. And so I think a box that could get just those two things could exclude some of the cost that's currently in some of the stuff that's currently on the market. And we could get the cost of a total Atmos system down even further, which I think would be a positive thing.
Oh, yeah. And I also wanted to mention, we've been able to play full Atmos mixes on the Galaxy just directly off of QuickTime and VLC Player.
That's great. That is fantastic.
So, yeah, that's something I don't think we've been able to do on the MTRX directly.
Yeah, I have yet to mess around with this. So if somebody else knows more than I do, feel free to shut me up. As I understand, you need to configure a virtual sound card, whether that's Dante virtual sound card or Loopback or Soundflower, to do the routing from whatever your source is on the Mac, whether that's QuickTime or VLC or Apple Music, to the sound card, to the virtual sound card, and then the virtual sound card puts out to the actual sound card. I have yet to mess around with that. There is an excellent Pro Tools expert article about it. And I'm just waiting to have 6 hours basically to dig in and configure everything. But it's really
Nice.
good to hear that it just works with the Galaxy. That's a
Yeah, with the Galaxy, basically from the core audio MIDI setup, you just go there, and on the audio settings, you define that it's whatever 7.2.4 or 7.1.4 system, and then you assign the channels right there, 1 to whatever, 1 to 9, 1 to 12, and you can actually even test the speakers, because there's like a little play button, and you can test the speakers, and it all goes out. And then we received some Atmos mix files from some engineer friends that are like the whatever the convention, I forget what the not .mp3 or mp4, whatever that.
.adm.
Yeah, ADM. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, they were like, we were able to play them basically natively, without having to go Pro Tools, whatever, just off of VLC and then QuickTime.
Man, that is huge. That is step forward. I think I'm gonna see if I can get somebody to send me one of those Galaxy systems. I might sell everything I just talked about if that works.
It's honestly, I mean, and manufacturers aside, because we've done some other installations using MTRX, and then we started doing here at MBRS in Studio B with Danny Munoz, like a little Atmos system with his G-tones, with the little tiny G-tone speakers, which came out awesome. And we said, oh, why don't we try out the Galaxy? And PK had a Galaxy, and we ran some tests with that, and it's awesome. And it's got like full speaker management already on the on board, like a full section, which is great.
You can tune everything the way you like, and they're coming out with a remote control type of thing. So you have a little remote control, and you'll be up and running with just one device.
Sorry, what's the model on the Galaxy again?
Galaxy 32.
Hey guys, I know too, talking to another guy, you guys may have already heard this, but a friend of mine is running a Mac Mini. Well, actually, he's doing it on his new M1 laptop, but he's running an instance of Logic Pro with 16 channels as an input, and he does a virtual Dante connection to it, and from Pro Tools or whatever DAW he's using. He can then go and switch between the two and actually stream in real time when he's mixing to the Logic session and listen to what Apple Music is going to be decoding versus sending it out on an email, sending it to your phone, streaming it to your other system. So they're able to run. I know some guys are going out and buying the bare bones M1 Mac Mini and using it as a second system, and they're just basically doing the I think it's Audio Nate is the company that does the virtual Dante over Ether, and basically they're just running it over to that, and they're using the Mac Mini as a playback in real time for what Apple Music is going to decode their music on, which is kind of cool. It's expensive, but it's kind of cool.
I'm running Dante Virtual Sound Card directly into the MTRX studio. It works great. So I can stream right out of Apple Music right into the MTRX studio. And let's make a note, this is the MTRX studio. The MTRX is significantly more expensive and more configurable than the MTRX studio. But it works great. You buy the $49 Dante virtual sound card license from Audinate, and then you stream right out of Apple Music right into your MTRX studio. Works beautifully.
That's awesome. I went the 908 route, which was really expensive, and I spent an extra $2,000 on the inputs for the receiver, and knowing that it's going to come back out. But it's a great unit. I love it.
We love that as well.
Okay, guys, thanks so much for all of this, Nate, especially. Any PK, your mic keeps triggering your video. You got to turn.
How about that?
Just mute your mic. Till you just mute your mic. I mean, I have my finger on the mute button. Yeah, it's good. Sorry about that. Yeah. You're still triggered. It's weird. You still have the green frame around you. All right, I'll just keep talking. So that's awesome, Nate. Thanks so much. We're gonna move on here. We try to keep these tech breakfasts around an hour long total, and I want to introduce Alan and Justin Hyatt, patiently waiting in the wings there, and they have lots to talk about. And in fact, the Trident A-range dual channel that I reviewed for Mix is now out in the magazine. I just got the online version, so you guys should be happy about that, I guess. I am. So take it away, Alan and Justin Hyatt.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. And thank you, Barry and
Morning.
and Tony, for allowing us the opportunity to come and speak. Today, we're going to talk about Trident. I'm assuming, is everybody seeing our shared screen?
No, we haven't started yet.
Oh, okay. So if we can start, that'd be great.
Nope.
Okay.
There you go. Nice.
All right. So I'm assuming a lot of guys on this Zoom conference here know who and what Trident is. And so I'll be brief with that. For those who don't, obviously, we'll explain it. Our company, which is PMI Audio Group, which is basically our global distribution arm for Trident, we own several brands. We own Trident, we own Tone Lux, we own Joe Meek, Valley People. What else is in our studio projects? So we own a group of companies that PMI markets. But Trident, as many of you know, is a very, very old console company that had many ups and downs throughout its history. But it's really quite a story. And if I can, is this on?
Yeah.
It's not advancing.
There you go.
Okay. So basically, and I see Adam Mosley here, who is a Trident alum and can probably testify to a lot of the ongoings of Trident. But, you know, Trident was a company that was developed by musicians, tech guys. You know, hey, there's a need for our studio, which is how it really, I think, pretty much all started out by Barry and Norman Sheffield. I know Norman was a drummer in London and worked with a lot of bands. And I know together, him and his brother decided they want to create this really cool studio. And of course, that branched out to all kinds of other video duplications and artist representations as well. And together they created Trident Studios. They always loved to stay ahead of the game than a lot of the other London-based studios. By that, I mean, whenever there was an advance in multi-tracks, Trident had to be the first ones to have it. If there was an experimental piece, they had to have it. And so it came a time where the consoles of the time just weren't keeping up with the tape recorders, and Trident had a need for a specific console, which no one could fill. So they started to go about and decided to design their own console. And people like Barry Porter and a few other people got together. The engineer, I'm spacing it out. Anyway, so they all got together to develop this new console, and they created the A-range. Now, they really didn't know what they had. After they did this, they started doing some really cool advertising, and they were kind of a funky company, but, you know, they were all about, what does it sound like? Okay. You know, it's all about the sound. They built this console to a specific need, and they voiced it. And in the old days, everyone has to remember that building something wasn't easy. Parts manufacturers weren't like they are today. So back then, there were these people with vans and cars that would pull up to the back of the company, and they'd ring the doorbell, and out you would come, and they'd pop open the boot, as they would say, or the trunk, and in it was lots of parts. And those are the parts that you bought. Now, the guy might have come back the next week or the next month, and you say, hey, I want more of these. They were never to be had. So during that time, the A-Range console was developed. It was brought to the AES show to be pitched as a product. In the early days, Cherokee became interested. A lot of other companies became interested, and they went about to build the A-Range console. Now, in the beginning, the A-Range console was basically made out of the parts that they could get. They did well. It was kind of a magic thing. It was, designed by accident. All of a sudden, there was this enormous console with great features and this incredible sound that it seemed everybody wanted to get their hands on. Now, again, back in the early days, with Trident Studios being artist endorsement as well, Norman basically discovered Queen, and Queen started coming into the studio. The studio started getting notoriety, and a lot of other people started coming into the studio, including the Beatles and many, many others, which is easy to attest. I mean, there are countless amount of hit records made on all different type of Trident consoles. But as it went on, the history just really started to penetrate, and everybody wanted to record on Trident consoles. Now, the thing about it is in today's market, to try and rebuild this is next to impossible. You can get close. You can't get to be 100% because all those parts and all those things that made that magic were no longer available. So we kind of set out looking to make the A-Range, which we decided to do not in a console, but as a rack mount unit, as accurate as we possibly could. And we used a lot of studios, a lot of A-Range studios from across the country to plot, listen to, audition, disassemble, if you will, and try and look what made the A-Range, so that we could do our best to emulate it. Now, there's a lot of studios, many of you know, seen some notable installations. And remember, there was only 13 of these consoles made. So the demand for them was strong, but they just weren't available. And that's why we did the A-Range, so that people could get a piece of it, at least the mic pre and the EQ section, and get that type of character sound that so many people wanted. And this type of sound appears on just tremendous amount of hit records and albums. I mean, many of you know these people. Many of you know who produced them. Many of you know when they were recorded. Many of you know what was the ongoings at Trident. I mean, engineers all over the place wanted to come in and learn. I remember talking with Adam, and Adam told me his story coming into Trident as a T-boy, basically someone who fetched tea, but dying to learn how to record and how to engineer and how to produce. And look at Adam now. I mean, it's just incredible. But this history goes back from rock to blues to hip hop to major players. Trident has been all over the place. Now, as Trident progressed, they developed many different consoles. Started with the A-Range, the B-Range, the Flex Mix, the TSM. David Kalmusky over at Addiction Studios in London has 2 TSMs. And there's, I'm sorry, in Nashville, I apologize. And they're still, putting out the hits on consoles. The 80B became an extremely popular console. So, like I said, in 2006, when we acquired it, we set out to make the A-Range. And our purpose was not to do a console, but our purpose was to do a 19-inch rack mount authentic A-Range with mic pre and authentic EQ. And it was quite a long process. I mean, we had to find A-Range consoles that were working, convince the owners that we wanted to take apart some of their consoles. We wanted to listen to it. We wanted to plot it. We wanted to do this. And it was really great that so many people were willing to do this. And we set about building prototypes, going about to the studios saying, hey, what's your 2 favorite channels? Because as you know, back then, Transformers, everything was wound by hand. No 2 channels were the same. Everything was different. We'd ask them, give us your 2 favorite channels. Let's A/B them. And as this progressed further and further and further, we felt that we had gotten about as close as we could. We enlisted Ken Scott, Dave Henschel, Paul Stacy, and others, Joe Ciccarelli as well. And what we did was we went about to the studios and we asked them, let's put this up, bring up your 2 channels of A-range. Let's listen to material, vocals, guitars, acoustics. Tell us what you think. And in the end, ultimately, everybody said we pretty much nailed it. Now, we don't claim to be an exact duplicate of the original A-range. The Transformers, which were the Bel Clair Zuttos, are no longer available. You can't get them. But we got about as close as we could. Same thing with the Souders. We're using the original Souders, but over the years, they've changed things as well, but we continue to use the Souders. So that magic still exists within the box. And, we think that we got it close. We also decided to do a 500 series A range, no mic pre, but just a mono piece. A lot of guys either didn't want a 2U or didn't want the mic pre. They just were looking for some EQs. So we did a 500 EQ as well. Now we will talk a little bit further about the A range as we progress along with some other things, but we just also want you to know that Trident is not just in business to build a 500 EQ or an A range mic pre. So there is the 500 EQ, but we also reproduced a lot of the consoles, but this time with advanced technologies in componentry and manufacturing techniques and stuff. We now offer 3 different series. We offer the 88, we offer the 78, and we also offer the 68 series of consoles for all kinds of budgets, for all kinds of recording, educational facilities, whatever you feel or think the need might be. But we offer a full line of products under the Trident banner and retain one of the original designers, Taz Bogle, who worked for Trident for almost 9 years as their head EE. Taz has been with us from the beginning. We also do the 80B 500 series. There's a few other 500 series that are not pictured in this presentation. You're welcome to go to our website to see about that. We have a lot of large, well-known, recognized customers. That's Daniel's 8840, Jay Ferguson's Gold Note Records France, educational facilities, DB Music in Berlin, City College of San Francisco. This is Yellow Dog Studios in Austin, I believe. Austin, Texas, Mastercraft. So, there's a lot going on. Do you have anything you want to add into this?
I think a lot of it at this point, we certainly like to open up for back and forth for questions. We can talk further about any of the other stuff. I will say for the A range itself, a lot of time was spent into duplicating the inductors. One of the key components of that product is the inductors and the EQ. It was difficult to say the least, and you'd think that the Transformers would be one of the more priority items for the sound of the A range. That turned out to be a lot easier than the inductors, and
Yeah, I'd say it's true.
You'd be really surprised how much sound is influenced by such small parts.
Right. And it was interesting because we found the original company that did the original inductors. They were out of France. And when we finally contacted them, they said, you know what? We're retired. We don't do this anymore. We can't make them for you anymore, but we have the files. And so we got down on our knees and begged, and they were very cooperative. And that aided us to achieve what we needed to do within the inductors, which was very helpful. So that was good. Before we start getting into questions and answers and stuff like that, I do want to mention that there's another brand that we have something exciting coming out that we want to touch on. Can you advance that?
Oh, you want to go back to it?
The Tonelux.
Sure.
It's just not working for right now.
There you go.
Okay.
It takes a moment. It's kind
Yeah.
of sluggish. Yeah.
All right. So, as some of you know, we started a project with Joe Ciccarelli quite some time ago to develop the Sony C37A and make as accurate as a product we could. We don't want to say clone because it kind of really is a C37. Justin can tell you.
Yeah, I mean, you could call it a labor of love, but I don't think I love it anymore. It's been very painful. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the C37. It was introduced by Sony in the 50s as a competition for Neumann and was pretty quickly adopted because of its price point and the popularity that it gained quickly with being a affordable tube mic for its era. We weren't really honestly looking to do this project. It was Joe that pushed on us hard to do it, and it was about 6 years now of development and research for the whole project, back and forth with dozens of different original mics from Sunset's mic locker, Joe's personal collection, and those donated by others. And we originally weren't actually trying to make the C37. We were just trying to make a similar microphone to it, and it just evolved into the C37 as time went on. And we're now so close that a number of parts are interchangeable with the microphone. The sound is indistinguishable from the original. It is an exciting project for us. We're really pleased with the outcome of it, and still building as quickly as we can to keep up with the demand. I'm sure some have tried to get it and haven't had luck with it, but we're in production still on more models to catch up, and we keep going. And that's just a little brief on it. I'm not going to get.
I do want to
into it.
back up to the power supply if I can for a minute, because one of the nice features about this is when you buy the power supply, it can power 2 microphones. So when you need the second mic, you don't need a second power supply.
Yeah, and that's also because we are selling stereo sets.
Pairs. We're selling single units and we're selling stereo.
And we do in-house.
Is the tube and everything in the power supply like the original?
No, we did put the tube into the microphone.
Okay.
And we build the caps in-house and hand tune the caps, so stereo matching is exact between the microphones, and you can overlay the curve of the JC37 to a C37. That they're so spot on.
And so if anybody has seen the Mix magazine already and read the review, Barry had an A range in there for quite some time.
The A range just came out.
Yeah, that was in the
Seems like
saw this morning.
Yeah, it just came out this morning. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was such a pleasure to use that thing. Gosh, I want to really keep it, but.
It costs a lot of money to build those things.
Yeah, I know. I'm not complaining. It was a pleasure to use that thing. I like the way the EQ works. I like, the EQ is such that when you really push an EQ, the electronics start to compress, just like the original console was that way. You see these huge boosts at like 5K and you go, oh my God, that's got to sound like take your head off. But no, it doesn't do that. It's like the amplifier kind of like compresses a little bit. It's nice. It's really a nice sounding box. It is total rock and roll box. Really is nice.
Right. So if anybody has any questions or specifics they would like to talk about, or anything that we're doing, or have any requests of things that we should be doing, feel free to say.
I got a question for Justin.
No.
He's still into fitness?
We're not going there.
Sorry, inside joke, guys.
John, you look good.
Just awesome. Just great. Thanks, guys, for doing that. And a little
Quick
history
question.
lesson on Trident. You know, I've been a lot of sessions at Cherokee back on those A ranges. A lot of sessions on a TSM. David Pack had one out there at the house, and yeah, a lot of great studio memories with Trident consoles for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they had a TSM actually at Cherokee and over on Studio 2 had a TSM, and the other two rooms were A ranges. The back room, which was the original MGM recording studio, you know, that recorded all those old Osmonds and those really ancient pop, teeny bop records from the 60s. That was all done in that back room. I'm not sure what board, but yeah.
Hey, Adam, is there any specific event at Trident Studios in the heydays that maybe comes to your mind that you might want to share with some of the people? Because the antics wasn't just the product, you know, I mean, it was the history of the bands and so much stuff that came in there, you know, to put this kind of music out. Was there any kind of one specific thing that you might want to share?
You need your audio, Adam.
So I always forget the button on the mic, that red flashing thing. That's a Trident engineer for you. Yeah, there so many phenomenal albums. You said it, you know, everything was designed by musicians, and the Trident way was like handed down from Ken Scott, RTB, you know, Roy Thomas Baker, Dave Henshaw, Gus Dudgeon, Tony Visconti. They were the guys that really, with Malcolm as well early on, and Barry Sheffield. But those producers and those records really defined the Trident way of doing things. And like a lot of studios, you know, everyone that came in as a T-boy, you know, worked their way up. I got in as a chef and construction worker to help make the control room big enough to get the A range in. And when you showed the picture of the control room, there was a glass window, and they wanted to, the control room was upstairs looking down. The mix room was the next floor up. But the control room had to be built out into space, and also a bigger window put in. The poster you showed, this I think was the one straight out of Billboard. And it's the same one in the elevator. You can't quite see, but there's a guy with a mustache and 3 trays of tea, and that's me in the elevator once the build out was done. So that's why I was hired as chef and builder, and then carried the A-frame range in with about 10 other people because it was so effing heavy. And then the minute they started to put modules in, I thought, what the fuck have I done? I'd quit law school. I thought, oh my God, maybe I can still get back into law school because I'm never going to understand this stuff. And the Trident way was that you just sat in the room. My first record I saw being done was Peter Gabriel, the Scratch album with Tony Levin and David Rhodes and those guys. The first albums I was involved in recording with Mike Stone, and Mike had done the demos for Queen because Queen were given downtime at like 2 a.m. as a favor to Paul McCartney. Brian May had become friends with Paul McCartney. The Sheffield brothers wanted to keep the Beatles at Trident, not knowing they were going to break up. You know, the White Album was done there and Hey Jude. But the whole way was like you got in, and like most studios, you managed to make it to tape up. After T-Boy, you sat at the back of the room, you shut the fuck up, you didn't breathe, didn't speak, and you just watched, listened, and tried to understand why Mike Stone, who I worked with for 3 years and had done 5 Queen albums, was telling me, put the LA2A on the acoustic guitar, put the 1176 on the bass, on the saturated heavy, I want LA3As on that, on those guitars. And some of the first record I mixed or sat in on the mix on the console was Rush, Permanent Waves. I'd assisted on Hemispheres before. So Spirit of Radio was the first song that I ever had my hands on the faders with Terry Brown and Geddy and Alex and those guys. But I mean, Trident as opposed to Abbey Road we know, you know, from great stories from Jeff and everyone, was very strict and quite rigid. Trident in every sense of the word. I won't elaborate. It was the 70s when I got in. Trident was very experimental, and everyone was encouraged to be experimental. There was a famous story, I think, with Robin Cable was engineering a certain record, I don't remember, and one of the other engineers walked in and he threw himself over the A range in the control room to hide his EQ because he'd come up with a different kind of sound on drums out of this console, which was magical. And that was his thing. He wasn't going to let another engineer find out how he'd achieved his thing. It was incredibly competitive. It was insane
Awesome.
how competitive that place was. But anyway, I'll
Awesome. Yeah.
leave you with that. There was a lot of very experimental behavior in sound and otherwise. I'll leave it there.
Okay, thanks so much. That's awesome insight to back in the day there, and Robin Cable, Elton John's guy, among others. And
Got a Trident story.
who's that?
It's Reed.
Hey, Reed.
We had a Flexi mix back in the late 80s, 90s in our studio. And today with our presenters presenting the list of Trident boards, this is the first time I've seen that a Flexi mix is a live console. So shame on us for buying it. But we always used to remark, and I'm sure our Trident presenters know, the Flexi mix was kind of in a metal cabinet and would sit on a metal stand. And we always joked that, and we were always constantly doing maintenance on this board. We always joked that the Flexi mix, if you actually flex the board, it would generate sound of its own.
That was the way at Trident. That's how things were done.
It was designed for Queen. It was built for Queen to be on the road, and they were one of the first bands that actually took a console on the road because Norman managed Queen as well as Queen being signed to Trident for 5 albums. And we would, when we went 48 track, we would put the Flexi mix behind the B range in the mix room, and you as the tape op or even T-Boy would be sitting on the Flexi mix, the secondary console, which would have various returns, and maybe you'd have tambourine, verse 2, bar 3, pan, and the Flexi mix could handle that, and you'd be sitting there watching the grown-ups on the big table, hoping if you got to sit with the grown-ups one day, and eventually you would progress to sit with the grown-ups at the B range in the mix room or the A range, which was in the tracking room.
Yeah, I'd always wondered what stories could that board tell?
Yeah, they all could. There's a long list of stories on all those consoles. And I was there the day that the A range was carried out. I carried the frame in, and when it was sold to Cherokee, I was there when it was carried out, and I was again hands on the frame, struggling to get it out the door.
The one at Cherokee, Bruce has running at, Cherokee's now on Melrose Avenue in Hollywood. And it was over there a while ago. And there is that board from Studio A in Bruce's studio. I think he has another one too, if I'm not mistaken. So he owns 2 of the 13 left of the A range anyway. So, yep. Those guys are funny. I would come in there and the board is a different color, and I go, dude, did you get a new board? He says, no, we just painted it.
Yeah, I know.
Funny guys. Well, awesome. Any further questions? I think we're pretty good on Trident. Anything further? We're going to move on to another topic. If we're all ready, if PK is still around, and are you there?
Still here.
Okay, PK.
Yes, thanks. I'm an electric lady, and I'm just,
okay.
Thanks. So
anyway, thanks, Alan and Justin, for doing that. It's awesome. And make sure you come back to any of the tech breakfasts. We're here. We try to do it last Thursday of every month. The link that you have in your possession will work just fine. It's a recurring, so just save it somewhere. But if you lose it or something, just let me know and I'll send you another one. It's we're trying to do these every month. We record them and then I post them to my YouTube page if you're interested. So anyway, next we have PK Pandy. Am I saying your name right? And
correct.
and he's going to talk about something that's going on for what, like 8 years, right? PK, something like that, with George
Yeah,
Osberger. Everyone
yeah.
knows George. His history is he's an AES
Oh, yeah.
fellow and studio designer and speaker, and so I'll go from there and take it away, PK.
Thanks so much. Nice to see some familiar faces on this call. So everybody knows George, and everybody knows that George designs rooms, and he designs speakers to match those rooms. So that's an Augsburger design. And back in the 90s, or maybe late 80s, people were just asking for his speakers. So these are his designs, and he's been having people in Los Angeles area, Northridge, it used to be Jackson Cabinets, was making it, but they had retired in 2014. I have a company that's been manufacturing speakers by George's designs and permitted by George since probably 2011. And then his cabinet guy retired, and let me share his screen. And George gave us the drawings for his RV1 horn. Let's see if I can get this here. Share this. Go to the patent office and apply for a trademark for the name Augsburger. So he was successful with that. And I can actually post the link here. This is a public website, so it's the government website. And it's easier to browse on your computer browser. And on the left side has the whole action that George, let me just share the screen so we can get to this right away. It's George, which is GLA Audio Research. And it's against professional audio design. There's 5 counts. There's a bunch of exhibits here. This is very complicated. But one is registering the name of a living person. Another is fraud upon the patent office. So you guys can just read through all these counts. And David Malport has been ignoring this, and it's a very elaborate case, and it's kind of messy. But we think George is going to win because it's his name, and these are his monitoring systems. So that's as much as I know. I've been just getting everything from there. I do have a common interest for George to win, obviously, because I make speakers. The name of my company is Symphonic Acoustics. Has nothing to do with the Augsburger, and I'm not going to take his name. In fact, George and I shook hands in 2016. My company name would be Augsburger Evolution. We shook hands at the NAMM show. We agreed, but then he said, "I can't use the name Augsburger because I'm going after David Malport." So David Malport is, a lot of people may even know this person, and he's just decided to do this.
His company is called Pro Audio Designs, right? PAD, is that his company?
Yeah, PAD is his company.
I can screen share this letter that George wrote to Mix Magazine. I think.
Yeah, to Tom Kenny.
I'm pretty sure this is it. Is that it? No, that's not it. Is that it?
It's on on your left there. That's the one.
On the left, yeah. So I don't know if you guys can read that, but he is apparently Mix Magazine did a story about Dave Malachor and talked about the Augsburger speakers, and then so George, you can imagine, George sent this letter to Mix to kind of set them straight.
Yeah. I don't know if they're going to publish it, or if they're going to publish it, or when. I don't know, but that's the actual letter, and it's public, and it was approved by George's attorneys.
Oh, I thought
those are the facts.
This didn't publish in Mix. In other words, he wrote the letter, but
not yet.
Okay, this is in response to an article. Yeah, a response to an article by Dave and PAD. Okay, got it.
They also sent to Larry Crane as well. So those are the facts. That's what I know. And it's kind of messy, but we're just trying to let the audio community know that this is happening when we're trying to be gentlemen in our industry. And we have people like this behaving in a way that does not represent the industry in a nice way. So that's it.
All right. Well, thanks so much for taking the time. I know you're busy with Stork and John Stork and so forth, as usual.
Yeah, Stork's there. Say hi, John.
Oh, He's in the.
Yeah, we're electric lady because we're doing work on the speakers, on Georgia speakers, original ones right here.
There you go, everybody.
There's Barry.
Hey, John. Nice to see you.
Hey, Barry.
Hey, everybody go, John Stork, everybody. Yeah. And that's awesome. Thanks.
How are you?
Thanks, guys.
Hi, Barry. All right, great.
Hey.
Good to see you.
All right.
All right, bye.
Thanks, PK.
Pablo can elaborate if you want. Pablo wants to stay on as well. Pablo has some information as well, but
Oh,
I
okay.
think that's enough about that.
Well, it's, you know, you raise the awareness. I had chimed in on your new Facebook page as to why this hasn't been taken care of. It's years and years and years. And I thought the upcoming AES show, something should happen. What's the AES? I mean, George is a AES fellow. I mean, what the hell?
Yeah.
And if I can add, I mean, not only that, but this is not like a recent new thing. It's been going on. And first, just as, you know, as gentlemen and, you know, professionals to, you know, and as men, just trying to solve this in an amicable way. And, you know, sometimes like, okay, if it was a misunderstanding or something like that, all right, you know, you can take accountability and maybe make reparations, but this is not the case. And his attitude is that this is his intellectual property and that he's gonna, you know, he's doubled down or triple down, I would say, because he just released some new product with this thing with like some small format speakers. And then recently, which, you know, we've never really gone after him or said anything regarding, you know, symphonic acoustics or even on a personal side, you know, myself. And we just started the Facebook group, the original Augsburger speaker monitor group on Facebook, and you know, an Instagram account just to show the original Augsburger designs. And so he went to Facebook and had all of this basically closed down and reported as you know, as we were impinging on his intellectual property and his trademark. So I mean, you know, this is ridiculous. Now the new group is called George Osberger Design Group, because I mean, come on, if he can go after that, and you know, then I guess we're doomed, you know, in this industry.
Well, if he doesn't sell any of them, he's doomed, I guess.
I hope. I mean, I hope more people now are aware, and his previous clients or future clients, of the kind of con that he's running on them, because I know just from people asking now that a lot of them are shocked and saying like, oh my God, he totally misrepresented himself and the product and the company, you know, for years. Like, I can't believe that he's been doing this. And it's like, yeah, you know, like this is, you know, the kind of weasel.
All right. Well, thanks for that. We are alerted. How many people are going to AES? Show up. Anybody in New York? Hey, you're going, Pablo. Anybody else?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Steve. Awesome. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out travel. You know, it's New York. And there's Gary Gottlieb. Yeah, awesome. Good to hear. There's some nice stuff in the chat if anybody wants to read. Yeah, Cherokee's still working. Joe, in fact, I was down there. Joe was down there when I was at Studio One Desk down on Melrose. And the modules, getting back to Cherokee for a minute, those input strips, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but the output of the strips is unbalanced. So to take them outside of the board, you got to put a transformer on the ass end of it. So is that correct? And those Zutkos are no longer made. So I think the new Trident version is very well done. I mean, they're using the Souters. You said you A/B'd them. It's pretty much like the board, right? I mean, so.
Yeah, on the desk itself, there's the input transformers to the mic and line, and corrects the direct outs from the channel strips are unbalanced. So mainly the biggest difference between that and the rack mount is the rack mount has the output transformer.
There actually is another thing. We also, not only is everything fully balanced in and out, but there's a balanced insert. So you can insert anything you want into either of the two channels. And those are all fully balanced send and returns as well.
That is a nice feature. I forgot to mention that.
And that was not on the original console EQ design, but it's something that, you know, again, we decided to add in because as time goes on, more functionality is needed, and you know, so that was a feature we did add after the fact.
Awesome. So
well, they definitely compare, and they sound pretty similar. You know, there wasn't enough of a difference to go, oh no, they're good. They're very good. I can say they're also a lot quieter than the originals because, you know, we've come a long way in design.
Yeah.
Architecture, especially with power supplies and making quieter power supplies.
That's right. Awesome. Somebody else put Peter Barker, are you still here? Hello. You have an Atmos getting back. I'm rewinding kind of.
Yeah, I'm still
rapidly. Here. Yeah. You have an Atmos with Callies as well?
Yeah. I have 3 IN8s, and then the sides and the surrounds are IN5s as well as the overheads. You can see I'm in the room right now. So
you have a little bit higher ceiling than when Nate showed. It looks like anyway.
It's quite a cool setup. You know, and the MTRX studio is great. I have surround sound TV going into it. I have surround sound Blu-ray. Then I have the DV link, which plays out of the renderer.
Awesome.
Then I'm using the Dolby Audio Bridge to mix into the renderer. And then I have this Dolby Virtual Sound card that goes into the Dante on the MTRX Studio, so I can play, you know, Atmos mixes directly out of Apple Music. So it's quite a cool.
Yeah, after I buy my new computer, I might be able to afford that. All that. Oh my God! So that's a good thing.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say, you know, I didn't have a chance to weigh in, but yeah, the speakers are quite good.
Well, I have a pair of IN8s right in front of me right now, the 8-inch 3-ways, and I have a pair of the LP6s, which you didn't talk about too much. It's a 2-way system.
Yeah.
And I've had every single speaker they've made, including the sub, here for review, and I think they're doing a great thing by offering these speakers that aren't an arm and a leg, but they sound good too.
They do. Yeah.
So there you go. Well, thank you, everybody. It showed up. Tell your friends. And I'm just looking at the chat. Anything further anybody would like to put in the chat? Paste it now. Trent Johnson.
Just that rest in peace, James Young.
Yeah.
Alan, that A range module, that's the same one I know and love, right? That's
Same
not
one
been-
you know and love.
Okay, good.
It's really a beauty. To record guitars through that just took me straight back to the days, you know, recording stuff at Cherokee, guitar players, recording Jeff Porcaro in the back room and drums. Talk about a drum sound quickly.
Yeah, Ken Scott has stacks of them and uses them on all of his drum recordings.
I believe it, because like I say, when you push a frequency as you want to do with a kick or a snare drum or something, it just sounds really good. It doesn't sound hyped EQ. It doesn't sound crappy. It just gives you that sound, and it's just very familiar drum sound, and you get it quickly. It's not like it takes a long time to study the EQ pattern. I don't take much time anyway to do that stuff, but yeah, the back room at Cherokee Studio 3 was the original room, and the front room was bigger, and you know, had Rod Stewart in there, and the whole crowd big enough for parties. In fact, you guys showed a picture of George Martin sitting behind the A range, and behind him is this Dolby rack and stuff. I believe that's Studio A or Studio 1, they called it at Cherokee, I believe. Because I remember that weird configuration with the Dolby racks, or was a kind of a T-shaped. So Yeah.
That was Cherokee Barry.
Yeah. I thought so. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, it's, you know, it's Trident, the A range is, you know, basically mythic type status. I mean, it's, you know, it's countless the amount of hits that have been done on that type of, on that EQ and mic pre that's been out there for that long. It's incredible.
All right, guys. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, Barry. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Barry.
See you later.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you, Barry.
See you next month.
You guys.
Fun as always. Thank you.
You got